we are going to find out that it will let us see a um, larger part of the history from the beginning to the end, like from the beginning coming to the end of this world. So it's one of the methods of prophetic analysis which Elder Permenda touched on as we were looking at Revelation 17. And he also highlighted the dispensational view. Who remembers what he said about the dispensational view?
Out of the seven kingdoms, say the dispensational view is looking at a specific kingdom. Like, for instance, the fifth kingdom, looking at only that one because we want to learn something about that kingdom. If you want to learn something about Babylon, you can just look at that only kingdom, which is Babylon. So you're looking at a specific time period of that specific kingdom.
Yes. Thank you, Tam. So the dispensational view, we are going to see that it covers a certain time in history. It doesn't cover like the whole history. Whereas with the panoramic view, we are going to see, it's like, let's say you're just standing like where we are now, we are able to see where we coming from, coming to the end of the time, the end of this world. It gives you that bigger picture. So dispensation, it's dealing with a time period, a certain era in history. So when we are going to look at the books of Revelation and the touching on the beast, we are going to see all that. So the beast of Revelation, with the beast of Revelation, we are going to identify the dragon which you find in Revelation.
So, friends, hello. Hello.
Oh, Can everyone hear me? Sorry, I did not unmute myself.
Yes, tell me now, you are audible.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I think I did not unmute myself. Okay. Picking off where Elder Gracious left off, I think she's kicked out. I myself haven't read the document. I think I have missed the document some way or another. I'm not sure how, but we can. So we can all participate because these are revisions. So we just touched on the two views, which is the panoramic view and the dispensational view. Those two were just explained. There are two views: it's the panoramic and the dispensational view. So if we look at the three chapters that Elder Paminda touched on, and Elder Gracious has just reminded us of, Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 13 and 17. There we see a beast with 7 heads, a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. So we are told in Revelation chapter 13 that this beast is standing upon the sea, or is coming out of the sea. Yet, when you continue with Revelation chapter 13, I think it's verse 11 up to 18, and then John sees another beast coming out of the earth. So he looks on one side, he sees a beast coming out of the sea. On the other side, John sees another beast coming out of the earth. And then a question was asked, as in, John was placed at a certain point. So he time traveled, actually. So from his time, he traveled forward to a certain point, and then it was asked, which point of history is that? Is there anyone who can tell us what point of history is that where John was placed? Where he was able to look to these two sides. One side, beast coming out of the sea, the other side, a beast coming out of the earth.
1798.
So it's 1798. We can all agree that it is 1798. So which view are we looking at if we're saying it's 1798? Are we looking at the panoramic view, or is it a dispensational view?
To me, it's a dispensational view because it has a time period.
It is a time period. Good, Nomboso, yes. So we have a time period here. So we know with the foreknowledge of Revelation 13, we know which beast is coming out of the sea. The beast that is coming out of the sea, we said it is Rome. and Rome is in two stages, which is the papacy. The second stage is the papacy. And then there is this second beast, which comes out of the earth from 1798. I think that can be shown in many lines, that this beast comes out of the earth in 1798. The line of the Millerites can show us that. I think the book of Acts also, Acts 27 to be specific, the two institutions. Remember, it's the USA and the SDA. So from 1798, we know that is the period, the time of the end, where America starts. It is the two-horned beast, the lamb-like beast with two horns. So John is also carried into the wilderness. He sees a beast there which is scarlet. We're also looking at a dispensational view there in Revelation chapter 17. We would understand that in Revelation chapter 17 from verse 1 to verse, I think it's 7. I don't have my Bible with me at the moment. It's from verse 1 to verse 7. That is the beast from the sea. You read those verses, you see that it's talking about the same thing, almost the same thing as that which you find in Revelation 30 from verse 1 to 10. It even speaks about this beast is scarlet, and it would say that this beast is drunk with the blood of the saints. I think that is verse 6. It is drunk with the blood of the saints, but it says the woman, sorry, it says the woman is drunk with the blood of the saints. So that's why it is scarlet, it is red, because it is drunk with the blood of the saints. So the wilderness is mentioned there. So we know that the woman, when the other woman, there's a good woman in Revelation chapter 12. She is clothed with the sun, standing on the moon with 12 stars on her head. So she was taken into the wilderness, and she was given eagle's wings into the wilderness. So we can link these chapters. I think there's something that was mentioned, which is by Hetties and others, that there are hooks that we can use to link stories, or to link you can say histories in prophecy. So those are one of the hooks that we can use, because wilderness is there in chapter 17. You can find it also in chapter 12. So if we may ask, which period is this? The time of the wilderness, where the woman was taken. Which period of history is this? Or if I may say, what does the wilderness mean?
Can I try?
Yes, you can try.
Wilderness is associated with drought, with scarcity. So the woman was no. No, let me just, I beg to withdraw for now. Apologies.
Who was that? Was that Putin, Nombuso?
Futhi.
Futi. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you for trying. Okay, the wilderness there can say it is a time period. Actually, it is a time period. The 1260 would call it the Dark Ages.
Yes.
But the symbolism it goes a long way there, because you have also Cain taking Abel into the wilderness and to slay him there. So that's where you start to find this wilderness idea, and then you go through it in the Bible. Then it's in Revelation chapter 12 picks up on this. 12 and 7 picks up on this. Remember the statement that says, the book of Revelation is where all the books of the Bible meet. So this wilderness idea is taken from all over, but where you find the first mention is in Genesis. So slaying of Abel, you find the slaying of the saints, Revelation chapter when it's 12, 13, and 17, but in the wilderness you find in 12 and 17. So John is carried to the wilderness. So the beast is scarlet. So the beast is red because it is drunk with the blood of the saints, and with the wine of her fornication in her cup. This is the woman, and the woman is riding the beast. Okay, I'm not sure how much time we have for the study, so that I do not go beyond the time allocated for it. Okay, we just carry on. We see where it takes us. Okay. So we'd understand the fifth kingdom is spans from 538 to 1798. That is the 1260 period. We are told, as we have said, the rising up out of the sea is interpreted as the papacy. The sea represents the fifth kingdom. The one preceding the rise means it's the kingdom before the sixth kingdom. The sand represents the sixth kingdom, where the beast wants to go and dies. Okay, so as we have said, we have 1798. I think the study that the Paminda was doing entitled it gerrymandering, something gerrymandering. There was a back and forth of where is John located? Is it on the sand? Is he on the sea, or is he on the sand? But it was discovered that John, as we have said, that he is in between the two kingdoms. So from the transition of the kingdom from the sea into the kingdom on land, which is the fifth to the sixth. Any time anyone can just chip in, because we are studying together. You can chip in to make additions to the study. So the other core issue in the studies was the principle that was developed. I think from previous studies already, Elder Paminda was developing this principle of Isaiah 46 verse 10. And that principle is past, present, and future. So it's a technique that is there. It's there in the verse. So the license is there that we can use this principle. So does anyone remember anything about this principle? Past, present, and future. What can we remember, or what can we pull out from this principle?
I remember that Isaiah 46 verse 10 says, God tells the future in the beginning. Then for us to know or to understand the future, we have to understand the beginning. And this Isaiah 46 verse 10 was put on a structure of 1, 2, 3, where 1 was standing for the Alpha history, and 3 was standing for the Omega history, and we had 2 in between. But as the time went on, we realized that the period from Alpha to Omega is far apart, is too far apart. Then we take 2. I'm trying, Tamina, you'll correct me, people correct me. Then we realize that where we are at 2. And when we look back, the past is we've gone a long way from the past. We are much closer to the end than from the past. And also, therefore, we notice that 2, in fact, 1 and 3 are too far apart, so we cannot bring them. We cannot say they can in terms of the time period. Therefore, it's 2 that is closer than 3. So to me, it brought an interpretation that we are much closer to the beginning. To the end. Even looking at the now, this was my edition. I stand to be corrected, but it was like, even looking at the kingdoms, more kingdoms are left behind, so very few are ahead. Then therefore it means 2 is closer than 3. 2 is much closer than 3, as 1 is to 3. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Futi. I think we have covered almost the whole point of the principle of Isaiah 46, 10. Is there anyone else who wants to add on into that, or have questions? Okay, we'll continue. I think that is clear. So there are examples that were given of these kingdoms, or of these 1, 2, 3 for Isaiah 46 principle. The example was Daniel chapter 3. That number 1, which is Daniel chapter 3, the golden image. And then number 3 is the Sunday law. So in order to see what the Sunday law would look like, we'd have to go back to Daniel chapter 3. Would understand also that we have now, how should we say it, Babylon of our time, and the olden day Babylon, which was the literal Babylon of your Nebuchadnezzar. And now we have the Babylon of our time, which would be, in this case, the USA for the National Sunday Law. So we have 1 and 3, but they are far apart from each other, as Foti has just explained to us. So we need 2. So 1 and 3 are far apart from each other, so we need 2. And then 2 would be our present. So what is it in the present time that has given us more information what the Sunday law would look like? Hence number 2. What is number 2? If we still remember, what is number 2?
Hello.
Yebo.
Okay,
Like, yes.
what I remember is, if I can start from the beginning, is that on Isaiah 46 verse 10, we have this concept that God tells the end from the beginning, right? And then,
Yes.
and then we say, I want to show that where does this 2 come from? So then, and then we say, if God tells the end from the beginning, who is God talking to? And we said God is talking to Isaiah. So this is Isaiah standing somewhere, and he's able to see the end from the beginning, or he wants to understand what's going to happen at the end. Then he needs to look at what happened in the beginning. So this is Isaiah standing in the middle of this period. And then we saw this because we were coming from Revelation chapter 13, and we saw similarities here because John is standing somewhere, we were told, and where he is standing, he's able to look behind him, and he sees the beast rising up, and also there's this beast rising up in front of him. And so, but for us now to make an application, we took all of this and we wanted to put it at the end, in our time. This concept of the present comes in, that we have the end or the future, we have the beginning. So where Isaiah is standing, it is in the present, So even John is taken from, because we know John is living 100 plus minus 180, but he's gonna be taken to the future to see what is happening there in the future in 1798. So John is in the present in 1798 when he sees all of these things. And he sees the beast, or he sees at least 5 beasts already fallen where he is. And we're gonna see that there's this other one, which we say is kingdom number 6. And then the other one, number 7, is coming in the future. So we take all of these things, we try to bring them in our time. And so we wanted to identify where is our present in our time, where are we standing, so we can be able to see what happened in the past, and then the past will be able to show us what is happening in the future. But the present is the one that we need, because the present is where you are standing, and it's easy for you to see because you just look around and see what is happening around you, and you are familiar with what is happening around you. Then now you can take what you see and try to show to go back into the past with this understanding of what is happening in your present, so that you can try to link them together. As it has been already said, that 1 and 3, or the past and the future, is too far apart. In other words, it cannot help us. They are too far apart. They are too far away. So yeah. And then we concluded by saying it's going to depend now of your story. Where do you want to take your story? You can say it's 2021. The present is 2021, where John is standing. But you can also say it's 1989, depending on your context and the story you want to tell. But if we say it's 2021, so if we're standing on 2021, because we said already this history has to be close enough towards the end. And the end is the Sunday law. And the end is, number 3 is Sunday law. We want to understand the Sunday law. And so if we are standing in 2021, right, now we see what is happening around us in 2021, and then we can go back at number 1. Number 1, we picked Daniel chapter 3 because we wanted to understand the Sunday law. So we went to that story of Daniel chapter 3 with this mentality, or with this understanding of understanding the present, our present, and how and what we see around us. And so we take all of this, we go back to that story of Daniel chapter 3, and then we saw what happened in Babylon when Nebuchadnezzar was raising this image, right? So we saw all of that. And we were also guided by Revelation 13, when we talk about the hooks, we talk about the hooks, or the connecting links. How do we connect Daniel chapter 3 with the Sunday law? You know, what gives us that permission So we saw that Revelation 13 talks about this image, talking about this power that is going to force people to make this image, to build this image, to bow to this image, etc. All of that will lead us now, or will allow us to link what is happening at the end because of this copy of the image that needs to be built in Revelation 13. And then we take all this to connect it with Daniel chapter 3. All of this, we're doing all of this so that we can understand the Sunday law, the future, or number 3, or yeah, the future. So yeah, I will stop here, but this is what, as far as I can remember, in terms of this number 2, the present. We're using this present time to help us to understand the past, so we can use the past to determine what is going to happen in the future. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doug. I think now we can close in prayer. No, kidding. I think you have covered almost all that is contained, or all that we are trying to look at the moment. Thank you for that insight. So Revelation 17 becomes the focal point of our of what we are trying to explore as far as the Sunday law is concerned. So all this is done in the context of Revelation chapter 17. So you've mentioned the number 2. That number 2 is the one that helps us to understand more about the Sunday law. So we are taken to Revelation chapter 17 in order to do that. And then the question was asked, what is the theme of Revelation chapter 17? What is happening there? If we can just look at the whole chapter and pull out the theme, as in what is happening there. Because we are looking at this principle of Isaiah 46. We want to make an application using Revelation chapter 17. Exercise this principle, and then we go to the world. I was just admiring this method. I think we have used it in many lines in our past history. That this gives us a template, a structure that we can use at any time. And because we have the structure, we have the methodology, so it becomes easy for us to go out into the world now and look at the events in relation to our template and be able to fit the pieces of the puzzle where they belong. Like you can pick an event and say, this event belongs here, because we now have a template, and we are less to commit any errors if we have a template, because we now have a structure. So it is a very admirable structure. So in chapter 17, what is the theme of chapter 17? If anyone can venture to help us there. What is the theme of Revelation chapter 17? But remember, we're looking at this in the context of the number 2, because we want to know about the Sunday law. So we are looking at number 2. What is happening that will culminate into the Sunday law? So what is the theme of Revelation chapter 17? Are we still there?
Yes, Poland, you're still here, but were you saying 17 or 13? Maybe I got confused somewhere.
17, 1, 7, 1, 7.
Sorry for saying Poland. I meant Tammy.
Not a
Okay,
problem.
so 17.
1,
Okay.
17.
Hello.
Yebo, is this Lucky? Lucky, yes.
Okay. Is Lillian want to say something?
Lillian.
I just
Lillian?
wanted to say Revelation 17 is talking about the great Babylon. That's it. So
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lillian. It's talking about the great Babylon. That must be the Babylon of our time.
Right. Also, the theme there will be we'll be talking about the rise and the fall of kingdoms.
The rise and the fall of kingdoms. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and then we can look at that deeply now and come to it and say we because it begins in Babylon, because we are given these 7 kingdoms, begins in Babylon, Medes and the Persians, Greece, pagan Rome, papal Rome, United States, kingdom number 6, and number 7, this United States, which is a dictatorship. And then we concluded by saying this rise and the fall of kingdom is all about perfecting this kingdom of Satan. So it is being perfected or prepared. It's the preparation. Satan is preparing his kingdom. So up until it is ready to do the work, a specific work at the end of the world. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The rise and the fall of nations or kingdoms, as like he has said. When we look at the rising and the falling of kingdoms, we also look at the manner in which they rise. How do they rise? And how do they fall? When we look at a prophecy from Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8 and 9, and then Daniel chapter 11. But specifically Daniel chapter 7, it mentions these kingdoms as beasts. And these are wild beasts if you look at them. They are violent in nature. It's like they kill their prey. actually those that are mentioned, the lion, your bear, your leopard. Then you have this dragon beast with iron teeth and nails of brass and all those characteristics. So that speaks to the manner how these kingdoms rise. It's upon dominating one another. They use violence as the means of getting into power. When you look at all these kingdoms, if you compare their way, their fall, it is said that their fall is internal and also external, because it is when corruption within is manifested in a kingdom that it falls. It was also discussed that we do not see any entity interacting with the king in any of the kingdoms from Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and the Rome, which is your iron, the legs of iron. But it is only in the feet of iron and clay that we see this entity interacting with the state, the iron being the statecraft, and then you have the clay being the churchcraft. We're using that term church loosely. So we only see that on the feet, but with a close observation, we realize that this entity that corrupts the kingdom from within has been there throughout, from Babylon up to the feet of iron and clay. Hence the rise, and then you have the fall. So the fall throughout all of them, it becomes inevitable when it is corrupted by this entity. Hence, they are all beasts. They become beasts when they interact or when they come into contact with this entity that is not supposed to be there. And this is Revelation chapter 17, where we clearly see that these kingdoms become beasts when they have allowed this certain entity to corrupt them. They allow this which they are not supposed to be in this relationship with. And then the Bible calls it fornication. So they are fornicating or committing adultery with this entity. Hence they get corrupted from within and then they fall. So we see that in Revelation chapter 17. So the rise and fall, it's also summed up into a power struggle. So it's a power struggle in Revelation 17 that we are also seeing, which is almost similar to the rise and fall of kingdoms. And then the question would come and be, who is fighting who, and for what reason are these entities fighting? What are they fighting for? And how are they fighting in order to get what they are trying to obtain? So we have said that it is power struggle. So they are fighting for power. So how are they doing this? And then you have three entities that were given definitions in Revelation chapter 17. three, there are many. Others are just a repeat and enlarge. But these three are the core entities of that chapter that are gunning for this power. Three of them. Do we still remember those three entities that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 17? Remember, we are looking this in the context of number 2, because we see we are looking at the Sunday law, and at number 2 we are closer, and we can see that this is a power struggle, which will eventually have its ramifications on the Sunday law. So what are these entities there in Revelation chapter 17 that are fighting for this power? Are we still there?
Yes, the government.
The government. Yes, that's correct. The government, right?
It's one of them, yes.
Yebo. What are the other entities?
We have the woman.
A woman as well. We have a woman. We have a government. And what else? There's a third one.
Isn't it the people that
The
that are
people.
ruled? Yeah.
Oh, okay, you can continue. Sorry.
No, I was asking, I wasn't sure, but I think it's the people who are being ruled by the
Yes.
government. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. It's those three entities that are there. So you have the woman, you have the government, and you have the people. So what does the woman want? What does this woman want?
The woman wants to rule the people, but to do that, the woman wants to combine or to work together with the government so she can rule the people.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So the woman wants to rule the people. She wants to get into an illegal relationship with the government.
King of the
Yes.
government.
But now there's something that is blocking this woman. The institutions are strong, so strong, that she cannot pass through this institution to get to the people. And there are entities that are supposed to be gatekeepers to make sure that this woman does not get to the people, because she wants to spread her teachings or her ideologies to the people. She wants to rule. She wants to control the people. Hence, the beast. The woman is riding the beast, but she is now blocked by these entities. would remember that the work of the government is to serve the people. I think
And to protect.
yes, to serve and to protect the people. Yes, yes. Thank you, Futi. To serve and to protect the people. Okay. So the government is doing what it is supposed to do, which is your head. So this is the head, and then this was defined as in the head. It's a political party with power. I think it was defined as that, a political party with power. And then a woman was defined as an entity with an ideology. And then you have the beast as a political party with power, and it is in relationship with the woman. So once it takes or once it's involved with the woman, and then it becomes a beast, a bad woman. I think that came up that if the government is involved with a bad woman, and then it becomes a beast. But if the government is involved with a good woman, and then it's not a beast. I think Revelation chapter 12 came into play there, as in the woman that was taken, that fled into the wilderness. And it was realized that this wilderness is the earth. The woman was taken to be fed for 42 months, and then she escaped. Or the Bible says the earth helped the woman. Sorry, that is the statement I was looking for. The earth helped the woman. And then we see that this woman has two principles that she is governed by. This is the good woman. These two principles, you would say, we can interchange this good woman with a lamb-like beast with two horns. So it's a lamb-like beast. I think those principles, those two principles, which is the separation of powers, which is the separation of the civil and religious liberties. So those are two principles, which is your would say it's a state and religion. So they must be separate. So that is the guiding principle. But when we look at number 2, it is called the agitation of the Sunday law. So the agitation, we see this wrestling of powers. This woman wants to get to the people, wants to go past the government. So it's the agitation of the Sunday law. So before we conclude our study, I don't want us to drag our study. We can see that all these kingdoms, not all of them, but from the 1st to the 5th, they are all beasts, or should I say they become beasts. We have Nebuchadnezzar being a king, a government, a good government, protecting the people and serving the people. But throughout his career, he changes. Now he wants to erect an image and compel people to worship this image. So he changes from being just a government of the people, for the people, by the people. He changes, and now it becomes a beast because he has allowed an ideology to influence him. He has adopted a certain religion, and this religion mixes, or this ideology mixes government and religion. I normally ask the question and say, if we have so many religions in the world, or let's just take South Africa, for instance, we have many religions. If the government is going to adopt a certain religion out of many, which religion would that be? Because that religion is going to make the government to persecute those who do not subscribe to that religion the government has adopted. So with all these kingdoms from Babylon, we see the same thing, except for the sixth kingdom. And the sixth kingdom, we realize that it is symbolized as a lamb-like. It's a lamb-like beast. So there we do not have this beast in terms of the state and religion coming together. We don't have that, which you find on the other kingdoms. Hence, it is lamb-like, because Christ subscribed to the separation of church and state. We hear Jesus saying, "Give unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, and give to God that which belongs to God." So he recognizes these two kingdoms, but they need to be separated. They need to be, religion and the government should be separated. Once there is an adoption of one religion over many, and then always there's a persecution of the dissenters. So, but the Bible then says, the heretics, yes, they are persecuted, those heretics. Yes, thank you for that such food. So Revelation 13 then says, this lamb-like beast will then speak like a dragon. It will speak like a dragon. This is where we now, in Revelation chapter 17, we are not told much about the seventh beast. We are not told much about the seventh beast. But in order for us to learn about the seventh beast, we are given the fifth. So we'll have to go back to the fifth beast and see what governed this fifth beast, and then we'll see the resurrection of that principle that guided this fifth beast on the seventh beast. So it's like a resurrection of what was before. You have it termed in Revelation chapter 17 that the beast is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. I think a study about number 8 was done. That number 8 is equals to number 7. Number 7 is equals to number 5. So number 8 is the seventh beast. It just means that it has resurrected from what was previously, which was the fifth beast. So we are not given much details. But what we know is that this beast, which was lamb-like, is going to speak like a dragon. But where do we find the dragon? The dragon we find in Revelation chapter 12, the dragon, this beast with 7 heads, and then it has 10 horns. So it's these two principles that we spoke about, which is panoramic and also dispensational, because there are specifics about that beast in chapter 12, which will tell us which dispensation is that, though it is mentioned in a panoramic view, but there's also a specifics that speak about the dispensation. Also in Revelation chapter 13, you find it the same thing, which is this dragon. It's this dragon beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It's the same beast, but more details or a different perspective is pulled out about this beast. In Revelation chapter 17, you find the same thing. It's a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. So there are specifics also about this this beast. So I was saying there are not much details given about the 7th beast or the 7th head. In order for us to learn things about this 7, we'll have to go to number 5. Not only that, but also go to number 6, and we juxtapose the 2 kingdoms, number 6 and number 7, and we compare them, their similarities and their differences. Their similarities being the way in which they rise and fall. So the way in which the 6th kingdom rose is the same way it is going to fall. The same way the 7th kingdom rise is the same way it is going to fall. So those are the similarities. The difference is that they are using 2 different principles. Number 6 is a separation of powers of state and religion. Kingdom number 7 is putting back the state and culture or religion. So it is going back to number 5. We see this power struggle that this beast wants to resurrect. It has been wanting to resurrect since from the time it was given a deadly wound. It has been pushed back by the institutions that were so strong to keep it at bay until the time it is allowed to come back into history, as we see. So we see this agitation or the power struggle, as call it January 6. So January 6 says something about what is going to happen at Sunday Law. There are following studies that talks to that. I think we will explore or as we go forward, as we continue with the studies, including the proofs. I think there are 5 proofs that we were given. We just touched on one there on the basic level, which is the rise and fall of nations. The rise and fall of nations. So we looked very brief on how these kingdoms rise in and fall. So we looked at that. We as we go forward, we also look into the other proofs. I think our study will end here for now, unless there are questions, concerns, additions, or any comments. Are we still together? Or hello? Means there are no questions. There are no additions. Hi, friends. Are we still together, or I've been ranting on my own? Can anyone just confirm if you can still hear each
Yes,
other?
we are still here.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
We are
Oh,
here.
oh, okay. Are there any questions, additions? Okay. In that note, we can pray to close the study. I think we have taken a lot of time. We can pray. Futi, would you please pray for us? Futi, Futi, are you still there? Okay, Futi is not there. Let us pray. Dear God, would like to thank you so much for the light you have given us for this time. Where would we be without your guidance? We thank you that you have sent thy messengers, thy servants, to give us the message for this time. As we see events all around the world happening, all around us, even in our own backyard, we thank you for the torch that you have given us to shine upon these events and give them their proper place in our history, so that as we understand them, we understand where we are and what we ought to do. We thank you so much. May we help each and every one of us to clearly understand the times that we are living in and take heed thereof. Thank you for the lesson we have just heard. May you continue to be with us as we are to lay for rest. May you be with us. Also wake us up in the morning. Lead. We thank you. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for the lesson. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. I'm not sure who I'm giving back to. I've been made a host. I've never dealt with this thing, whether it was recorded or anything like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to go from here. Do I just switch off or do I give back to someone? I'm not sure. Can anyone advise?
Yeah,
We end the meeting. That's all.
yeah, you can just switch it off. We're done.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good
you.
night. Good
Thank you,
night.
Tammy.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Night.